Hell for Carl Sellerman.
I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night.
Who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats, floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz.
Oftentimes he'd come off stage and vomit with the sort of stress. As I recall, he'd often finish a performance taking his clothes off, not to flash or see if he had any takers in the crowd, but seemingly just to say, there's nothing here, folks, to be afraid of. I mean, all it is the physical body, which we all variously have.
Who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof waving genitals and manuscripts. Who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy.
I was in the audience, and when I went home that night, I sent a telegram to Alan. I greet you at the beginning of a great career. When do we get the manuscript?
Ferlinghetti urged me to print it, and I said, oh, well, why not? So I sent it to my family, and they said, okay, why do you need all these dirty words, but it's a great poem.
Censorship has often been good for poetry. You yourself had the good fortune of having Hal banned by the U.S. Customs in 1957. That created a lot of publicity and probably sold a lot of books.
Oh, yeah, I have to thank them completely for my fame, whether the police.
We were quickly identified by the media as a dangerous revolution.
The censorship trial against City Lights and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and his bookseller, who was also arrested in the case, really centered on a couple of important issues. One was the very simple issue of whether or not one could use an obscene word like fuck in a poem and have it, well, later on read over the radio, which is still continuing. Others, of course, issues were the fact that Ginsberg was talking openly about his homosexuality and his drug use.
The judge ruled that, quote, in order for a work of art to be judged obscene, it had to have no redeeming social significance.
And it was cleared.
What sphinx of cement and aluminum bashed open their skulls and ate up their brains and imagination? Moloch.
Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ash cans and unobtainable dollars, children screaming under the stairways, boys sobbing in armies, old men weeping in the parks.
I asked him about some of these images. Well, where did these images come from? He said, oh, he was completely stoned.
Moloch, Moloch, nightmare of Moloch.
Nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, mental Moloch, Moloch the heavy judger of men.
Moloch, whose eyes are 1,000 blind windows. Moloch, whose skyscrapers stand in the long street like endless Jehovah's. Moloch, whose factories dream and croak in the fog.
Moloch, whose smokestacks and antennae crown the cities. Moloch, whose love is endless oil and stone. Moloch, whose soul is electricity and banks. Moloch, whose poverty is the specter of genius. Moloch, whose fate is a cloud of sexless hydrogen. Moloch, whose name is the mind.
Moloch, whose name is the mind.
Kaddish for Naomi Ginsberg, 1894, 1956.
Strange now to think of you, gone without corsets and eyes, while I walk on the sunny pavement of Greenwich Village, downtown Manhattan, clear winter noon, and I've been up all night, talking, reading the Kaddish aloud, listening to Ray Charles blues shout blind on the phonograph.
The rhythm. And your memory in my head 3 years after, and read Adonias's last triumphant stanzas aloud, wept, realizing how we suffer.
My mother had a series of nervous breakdowns from the early 30s on.
She was intermittently mentally ill. In the early part of the 20s and 30s, she had nervous breakdowns. Then she had to go to hospitals at different times. And when she'd come back, there would be great welcomes, and she'd be normal, or at least quasi-normal for a couple of years, and then there would be descent into madness, and then it grew worse.
Wept, realizing how we suffer, and how death is that remedy all singers dream of.
Sing, remember, prophesy, as in the Hebrew anthem or the Buddhist Book of Answers, in my own imagination, of a withered leaf at dawn.
Like a poem in the dark, escaped back to oblivion. No more to say, and nothing to weep for, but the beings in the dream trapped in its disappearance.
No more to say, and nothing to weep for, but the beings in the dream trapped in its disappearance, sighing, screaming with it, buying and selling pieces of phantom, worshipping each other, worshipping the God included in it all. Longing or inevitability, while it lasts, a vision, anything more?
Oh, Mother, what have I left out? Oh, Mother, what have I forgotten? Oh, Mother, farewell.
Farewell with 6 dark hairs on the wen of your breast. Farewell with your old dress and a long black beard around the vagina. Farewell with your sagging belly, with your fear of Hitler, with your mouth of bad short stories.
With your fingers of rotten mandolins, with your arms of fat Patterson porches.
With your belly of strikes and smokestacks, with your chin of Trotsky in the Spanish War, with your voice singing for the decaying, overbroken workers.
I think it sums up a whole generation's political idealism. That's Naomi's political idealism, the generation of Americans who were immigrants, who came here, as Naomi's family did, with the dream of a better life, a better world through America's participation in a great democratic experiment. And Allen, in the poem, describes what fate, shall we say, met those immigrants coming to America, and the disillusionment which led some people, like Naomi Ginsberg, into madness, and the rage of a son who also believed in her utopian dream and was unable to see it come to anything except through his poetry in America at mid-century. That's what I think Kaddish is saying.
At one point he speaks of his mother being his first teacher, and a sense of him, his understanding almost coming out of her brain, some link there that she was, he was with her in her, in her suffering, and so close to it, of course, as a child.
With your eyes of Russia, with your eyes of no money, with your eyes of false China, with your eyes of Aunt Eleanor.
With your eyes of starving India, with your eyes pissing in the park, with your eyes of America taking a fall.
With your eyes of your failure at the piano, with your eyes of your relatives in California, with your eyes of Ma Rainey dying in an ambulance, with your eyes of Czechoslovakia attacked by robots.
With your eyes running naked out of the apartment, screaming into the hall, with your eyes being led away by policemen to an ambulance, with your eyes strapped down on the operating table, with your eyes with the pancreas removed, with your eyes of appendix operation, with your eyes of abortion, with your eyes of ovaries removed, with your eyes of shock.
With your eyes of shock, with your eyes of lobotomy, with your eyes of divorce, with your eyes of stroke, with your eyes alone, with your eyes, with your eyes, with your death full of flowers.
My feelings toward my mother were not dead. And I think our feelings toward our parents, our desires, our loves are not dead in anyone. It's all there, a whole world that is just simply not used.
It absolves and recognizes and gets through such an extraordinary passage, really, such a complex passage of relationship and love and confounding and confusion and despair and loss.
With your eyes, with your eyes, with your death full of flowers.
I had at that time the idea that it would be good for me to go outside of America, outside the United States, every few years and take a look back from abroad and broaden my education. And so in 1960, I spent a half year in Latin America, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, and came back and spent till another year and a half in America. Then I thought it was time to go again with Peter, and maybe this time go a little further.
I saw Alan again when we went to India in 1962. We all paid our respects to all the Hindu shrines and the Buddhist shrines. I chanted all of the sutras I knew from my monastic experience. And Alan said, oh, he said, you learned to chant. They taught you how to chant. Let's chant together.
Om Namo Shivaya. Hari Om Namo Shivaya.
We're here to talk about the avant-garde. I should like to begin by asking Mr. Ginsberg whether he considers that the hippies are an intimation of the new order. Why don't I read a poem? I mean, like
sure, go ahead.
A legal poem.
Go ahead.
Do you have one? A legal poem? Yes, I have one. An interesting project, which is a poem which I wrote on LSD.
Under the influence?
Under the influence of LSD. Whale's Visitation. White fog lifting and falling on the mountain brow. Trees moving in rivers of wind. The clouds arise as on a wave. Gigantic eddy lifting mist above teeming ferns, exquisitely swayed along a green crag glimpsed through mullioned glass in valley rain. Nice, okay.
When are we going to get controversial again, Alan? That's all getting too sedate, don't you think so? How many years since you been busted? I mean, we're in trouble here.
I was busted just 3 weeks ago.
Of course, of course. There you go.
Ginsberg has used many drugs for short periods of time. Alcohol, occasionally. Marijuana, occasionally. He's used amphetamines. Kaddish was written with the aid of amphetamines. He's used lysergic acid, LSD. He said in the New York Times that he smokes pot once a week. And in 20 years, I've hardly ever seen him smoke pot.
Home bomb, we bomb them. Home bomb, we bomb them. Home bomb, we bomb you. Home bomb, we bomb you.
Eisenhower, leaving office, warned the citizens of the United States of America to beware of the beginning of the military-industrial complex, who are coming together into the corporations that we have today, taking control of the finances of America to build weapons of mass destruction.
We are going to Chicago, about 250,000 of young, energetic love buddies, to engage in a youth international party, sing in, grope in, love in the parks and streets of Chicago during the time that the Democrats will have their death convention.
Alan and I, decided to go to Chicago to be part of the Festival of Life.
My own feeling is I don't want to get my head busted in, and I don't want anybody who came
knowing that I was coming here to have their head busted in. So I'm not going to march formally as a yippie. I'm going on the mobilization march as an individual, but not as a leader of yippies. And I don't know if I'll march from here if it looks like a bloodbath scene.
Alan was there and with his gravelly, sore, hoarse voice chanted with the whopper, whopper, whopper of the helicopters overhead. And they had these jeeps with barbed wire enclosures, so they were like hippie sweeping jeeps, and guards with fixed bayonets, and guys with gas masks with backpacks. They looked like crop sprayers, only they were guys with tear gas spraying equipment, all surrounding us. And Alan came up to a bullhorn. I remember he totally blew out his voice chanting Om. Hours and hours, maybe 10, 15 hours.
With a poem like Plutonian Ode, Alan wanted to address the current situation in Colorado at the Rocky Flats munitions factory where they were making triggers for hydrogen bombs.
I publish your cause and effect. I turn the wheel of mind on your 300 tons. Your awful appellation enters mankind's ear. I embody your ultimate powers.
Make love, not war. It's grounded in an understanding of the nature of the universe and that you can't fight us. And the problem is seeing our unity, particularly black and white, particularly square and hippie, particularly police and student, particularly Birchite and faggot individualist.
It's just that in politics you are a little bit naive.
In Vietnam, the body is burned to show the truth of only the body. In Kremlin and White House, the schemers draw back weeping from their schemes. In my train seat, I renounce my power. So that I do live, I will die.
Lower East Side. That round-faced woman, she owns the street with her 3 big dogs, screeches at me, waddling with her shopping bag across Avenue B, grabbing my crotch. Why don't you talk to me?
Why don't you talk to me? Baring her teeth in a smile, voice loud like a taxi horn. Big jerk, you think you're famous. Reminds me of my mother.
He caught the lament of suffering through life, which Jews, always being an outsider people, have felt, which segues so terrifically into Buddhism for him, because Buddhism starts with life as suffering. Buddha died and left behind a big emptiness.
We studied together. We try to learn the essence of the Tibetan Buddhism and what can it make a difference to people's life. And since then, we become friends. And I was a bit surprised. I was expecting a angry point.
This world.
Born in this world.
You got to suffer.
You got to suffer.
Every changes.
Everything changes.
You got no soul.
You got no soul.
Try to be gay.
Try to be gay.
Ignorant, happy. You get the blues. You eat jelly rolls. You eat jelly rolls.
That spiritual searching and that acquiring of teachers led him to his first really great true teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Tibetan Buddhist teacher.
I met Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa, on a street corner in New York with my father by accident, way back in 1970. And then I came here to Boulder, and he invited me to teach poetry and meditation.
That led to the founding of the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics, the writing department of the Naropa Institute.
I think one is very lucky to be able to take the energy from New York and spread it out to Boulder.
Did you ever see yourself a breathing skull looking out the eyes? Under wooden roof beams, 100 people sit, sniffling, coughing, clearing throat, sneezing, sighing, breathing through nose, shifting on pillows and clothes, swallowing saliva, listening. Attention, 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 each moment. And as the cosmological Amitabha Buddha suggests, this giant eon that we're living in right now, in this giant eon, human beings can hope to achieve insight best by paying attention to hearing.
Well, Alan's always wanted to be a rock and roll star. He's a terrific groupie of the rock and roll scene.
A ballad of American skeletons, or American Ballad of Skeletons. Said the presidential skeleton, I won't sign the bill. Said the speaker's skeleton, yes you will. Said the representative skeleton, I object. Said the Supreme Court skeleton, what do you expect?
You know, the people he loved, Ma Rainey, Bobby Dylan, the old blues singers, Bessie Smith, Billie Holiday. That is where his music comes from. The form of music that he knows is the old blues.
Hey, Father Death, I'm flying home. Hey, poor man, you're all alone. Hey, old daddy, I know where I'm going. Old Auntie Death, don't hide your bones. Old Uncle Death, I hear your groans. Oh, Sister Death, how sweet your moans.
All poets write about death. And the longer, more successful you are at poetry, the more you're going to write about death.
Thank you for inspiring me to sing this blues.
In the late 70s, the death of his father brought out an amazing Williams-esque Patterson-style poem.
Wasted arms, feeble knees, 80 years old, hair thin and white, cheek bonier than I'd remembered, head bowed on his neck, eyes opened. Now and then he listened.
I read my father Wordsworth's Intimations of Immortality, Trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home.
That's beautiful, he said, but it's not true.
Genius death, your art is done. Lover death, your body's gone. Father death, I'm coming home.
Near the scrapyard, my father'll be buried. Near Newark Airport, my father'll be under a Winston cigarette sign buried. On exit 14, Turnpike, New Jersey South, through the toll gate service road 1, my father buried. Under the Penn Central Power Station, transformers and wires at the borderline between Elizabeth and Newark, next to Aunt Rose Gatamack, near Uncle Harry Meltzer. One grave over from Abe's wife Anna, my father'll be buried.
What's to be done about death? Nothing. Nothing. Stopped going to school number 6, Patterson, NJ, in 1937. Freeze time tonight with a headache at 1:45 a.m. Not go to father's funeral tomorrow morn. Not go back to Naropa, teach Buddhist poetics all summer. Not be buried in the cemetery near Newark Airport someday.
It was exciting to come and work for Allen Ginsberg. I think I was in awe of his vast amount of interests in his file cabinets, where there were one whole green rack of file cabinets, and each one said dope, and the other one said dope, and the third one said mostly dope. There was a file called Death and Asshole, which had his medical papers and his will and things like that in it. He had another drawer marked FYPC, which stands for Faded Yellow Press Clippings.
He keeps napkins that he makes notes on. He keeps all his lists. He keeps all his phone records. He keeps all his all the evidence of his wandering through the sea of life. Is that too much? I don't know. Gives a bunch of graduate students something to do.
You'd be talking to some complete stranger at a party or something, totally absorbed in this person. And what he's doing is he's siphoning up the other guy's brains.
He keeps a journal with him constantly. Most of the pages are dreams, some notations of events of his day, and poems. He tends to write late at night or be awakened by poems and writing through fits and starts through the night.
Sleepless, I stay up and think about my death. Certainly, it's nearer than when I was 10 years old and wondered how big the universe was. If I don't get some rest tonight, I'll die faster.
Does he work too hard? Yes. For a guy with congestive heart failure, diabetes, and who knows, Bell's palsy.
Poet professor in autumn years seeks helpmate, companion, protector, friend, young lover with empty, compassionate soul, exuberant spirit, straightforward, handsome, athletic physique, and boundless mind, courageous warrior who may also like women and girls, no problem.
To share bed, meditation apartment, Lower East Side, help ensure mankind conquer world anger and guilt. Empowered by Whitman, Blake, Rimbaud, Ma Rainey, and Vivaldi.
Photographer, musician, painter, poet, yuppie, or scholar, find me here in New York alone with the alone, going to lady psychiatrist who says,
make time in your life for someone you can call darling, honey, who holds you dear, can get excited, and lay his head on your heart in peace.
I was warned. Now I'm a senior citizen and stuck with 1 million books, 1 million thoughts, $1 million, 1 million loves. How will I ever leave my body?
How will I ever leave my body? Allen Ginsberg says, I'm really up Schitt's Creek.
Even the most
difficult person may think he's exterminated his tenderness or his sensitivity or his longings or his desire, but it will come out on the deathbed, on dreams and moments of sexual ecstasy or fantasies or daydreams or who knows. And it seemed to me a great thing to actually open up and reveal what was desired. In fact, that's in a way the whole task of poetry or art, to reveal the inner world that does exist, that isn't acknowledged socially or isn't even acknowledged personally sometimes because it's so buried. So it's latent, but it's there.
Dear Alan, there are 785,000 copies of Hal in print in America, but there is only one that has been read by your bed as you lie beneath the portrait of Walt Whitman in your death sleep. There is only one copy that witnessed a humble blue curtain flutter in the breeze above your pillow as faithful monks chanted and friends softly shuddered and Peter discreetly attended, and a universe of children kept turning, spinning little blue songs in the form of little blue cloths, the size of even smaller skies, peopled with tiny stars whispering, "You are dead."
He opened his eyes. There were about 11 of us there, all very awake at 2:40 a.m. Friday. And it was a very peaceful death. And Gellick Rinpoche now, Gellick Rinpoche in front of Alan's altar, is inviting Alan's soul to come out and obtain enlightenment right now. And if Alan can't do that, the Gellick and his Tibetan chanters are saying that we want you to have a better rebirth than last time around.
Born in this world, you got to suffer. Everything changes. You got no soul. Die when you die. Die when you die. Lie down, you lie down. Die when you die.
Oh, Allen Ginsberg, see what you have done. C.C. Allen, see what you have done. You have taken us in from many worlds, and you made us all as one.